Alan Patching back. I thought you'd be interested in some of the major causes of stress I found from the women I researched after they'd had success using the program, and that was after they had several failures previously undergoing IVF without the program. By far the number one stressor was maternal drive. I don't think any male, and I don't think any female who hasn't wanted to have a baby would understand the power and the strength of maternal drive. And I'll leave you, if you're interested, to read the actual research article to see some of the comments made by this women. But the stress caused by the maternal drive not being satisfied was just amazing to learn about. The next one was a loss of control and a need to get it back. And the loss of the control came because basically their lives were in the hand, these women's lives were in the hand of the medical practitioners. You take this needle on this day and you do this on that day and you have sex according with a calendar or a thermometer. And in other words, you're told when to have it rather than being asked by your partner when you might like to have it. It just goes on and on, all these particular stressors that added up to a loss of control or a sense of loss of control. And that was extremely stressful for the women that I spoke with. Another one was more an ethical issue, and that was the matter of remaining embryos. Even women who weren't particularly religious declared that when they'd had a number of eggs harvested, taken during the oocyte or egg collection, and they were fertilised in the IVF process, only a couple of those might have been put or inserted back into the uterus. And then there might still be a couple frozen for a later time. They ever got to the point that they didn't want any more children in their family. Some of them faced a major ethical dilemma, which was very stressful. To some of them, disposing of those embryos was tantamount to killing a living thing. Now, not everybody would agree with that, but that's what they told me. And for the women who had that attitude, it was an extremely stressful position for them to deal with. The next category was life and work, and I don't think I need to explain that. It's just the normal thing that comes from pressure of work and pressure of everything in everyday life, and then having to add to that, the process of becoming pregnant and all the controls involved. And even beyond that, in many cases, not letting people know for various reasons that they're undergoing it. Another major contributor, I think, was personality and attitude. A lot of people were getting quite down, even depressed in some cases. And of course, people who get down and anxious and depressed, they tend to delete, generalize and distort information. So all of a sudden, instead of looking at this result and saying, well, if we calm down and look at our diets and our lifestyle and everything, things will be fine going forward. It was more like, oh, this is going to work. It's costing us a fortune. This is never going to happen. We're unlucky. What will we do? And they took that negative attitude. Not everyone did that, but those who did seemed to be creating more stress for themselves. The IVF process itself, for some people, was not at all stressful. For others, it was incredibly stressful. For probably a third of the women, they told me first time around it was very intrusive and very stressful, but after a while, one woman used an expression along the lines of, everybody in the clinic's seen everything I've got, so it just doesn't worry me anymore. So they took a very sanguine approach to it. But for those who got caught up in the stress of the process, it was a fairly major stressor indeed. Another stress, IVF is not cheap, and it was finance problems for many people. Several have loaned from family. One particular woman told me she spent well over $70,000 of her own money, and this is beside the government contribution to cycles. Amazing. And there's very different rules between, say, Canada and New Zealand and Australia, and I can really see that at some time in the future the Australian government will address it, because particularly with people over the age of 40 or 44, where the chances of success even with IVF get lower and lower. The government of Canada, the government of New Zealand have taken some very strong views on how to deal with that, and I can see our Australian government following in due course, although there's nothing that I know of in the political discourse at the moment about that. Miscarriage was a major stressor for those who experienced it. In fact, 3 of the women, I think it was, on our study had experienced miscarriage. One of them multiple from memory. And certainly one of them had a stillbirth at 21 weeks or thereabouts. And in Australia, after 20 weeks, stillborn involves having a funeral. And that was a major, major stress for this woman. and nothing would make her relax. She didn't tell anybody, including her parents, until she got past the 20-week mark, and we had to do weekly work with her to keep her relaxed during her pregnancy, and didn't tell any member of the family apart from her mother until the baby was born. It was that strong a stress for her. Age, women who are in their late 30s, early 40s, the oldest one on the program was 43, and she got pregnant on the first round, which you wouldn't expect. But anyway, age, the bottom line is that most research shows that once you get past the age of 43 or 44, your chances of pregnancy are well below 5%, and some reports will say even 1%. So it is a stress for women who are reading and hearing this sort of information in the press and from their friends, etc. Social issues. Social issues is, do you tell your friends, do you not? Family as well come into this, and even culture. I had a woman from a country where you're expected to have children by the age of 30, and she hadn't, and that was a major stress for her, that everybody was asking why not, and she couldn't tell them she was having IVF until such time as she actually was pregnant. So a lot of pressures from these sort of issues that you might not expect, and you look at these issues, they're the sort of thing that are just part of life, but when you're undergoing IVF, they're a part of life that produces stress, and that's not a good thing to have happening, particularly in accordance with what I found out and what the Lynch study said as well. There are major life things as well, things that have happened to yourself, having a divorce at the wrong time. I had a woman who started on the program with Drew because her brother died and she was very close to him during the process. A relationship breakup, because it can be very, very stressful. And in the next little video with this release, I'll just address some of those issues. But for now, that were the major issues that come out in the research that gave rise to stress, and this is by far the longest video in this release. So just one more to go, and it's quite short. See you back on that one in just a little while.